All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the CHAOSS monthly meeting. So this is where we will kind of walk through the working groups and the software and get updates from folks as they are on the line. So the minutes have been shared. You can put them in here again. So there you go. So please add yourself and tell us how you're feeling today.
Or we used to have in here an alternative, something that
Yes.
is on your desk that we cannot see, and I said something on your wall.
That counts. Because I only see this small visual of everybody every time, so. All right. Let's see, why don't we go ahead and get started? We'll start with updates from the metrics working groups. I might go in slightly reverse order, not reverse order here, but out of order. I'm going to start with D&I, if that's all right with you, Georg. Sure. I know you were on the call on last week, and I wasn't able to make it, so give us an update of what's going on there.
Yeah, the D&I working group has been focused on metrics. We have several metrics that we're working on. Inclusive leadership is a metric proposed by Emma Irvin. We have been working on issue tracker inclusivity proposed by Mariam. We have been working on the documentation accessibility metric, which we're still in the process of breaking out into 3 metrics. The other thing that we always talk about are the updates from our Google Summer of Code and RPG student, but that falls under badging. So we can talk about that in the badging section.
All right. Do you think those metrics that you mentioned are going to be on target for the release that would come up in about 3 weeks, or the kind of the close, you know, for public comment?
I think we can have 3 ready. I think the inclusive leadership one, Matt Snell had volunteered to take a pass and do some maintenance work on it to get it ready. The issue track inclusivity metric was somewhat close to being good or being accepted. And then we have the documentation accessibility metrics, which I think we can have 1 of the 3 ready.
Gotcha. Okay.
Just looking at the workload.
Okay, good to know. The only reason I ask is I'm trying to get some sense of what the next release is going to look like now that we're kind of 3 weeks out from asking the working groups to call closure to some of their work so they can release the metrics for public comment. So, all right, cool. Anything else from, yeah, go ahead.
Maybe we should move the discussion for the next metric release up so everyone is aware of the timeline that we've set ourselves.
Good call. Let's go ahead and do that. Oh, you moved it up. So thank you. So if you take a look at the top of the minutes, we've always been kind of talking about an August-ish release. And I think in the last community call, I think it was last Tuesday, we kind of settled on August 1st. Thanks, Georg. And that would, August 1st represents the release. So for those of you that haven't been part of a release before, we have a kind of a 1-week period prior to release that's required to get everything up on the website and kind of clean up any loose ends. So there's kind of 1 week prior to August 1st that is that. Prior to that week, there's a 1 month comment period. So basically all of the metrics that are prepared in Google Docs as they've been being prepared for a while now. They're moved into GitHub, and we take public comment on each one of the to be released metrics. So that's a 4-week period. So you can kind of see that 1 week of getting things onto the website plus 4 weeks of public comment is 5 weeks. And so if we're aiming for an August 1st release, we need 5 weeks prior to August 1st for the work in the working groups to conclude. So that's June 24th. So for each of the working groups, D&I, evolution, risk, so on and so forth, we ask that each of the working groups or working group leads, people who are involved in those working groups, aim for that June 24th kind of closure time within your working group so we can kind of open up the metrics for public comment. Garrett, do you want to add anything to that?
You described the process really good. We had a message to the mailing list last week, and I didn't see anyone commenting on it, so we move forward with this timeline.
Okay, I will, yeah, I think that sounds good. We can talk, maybe not now too, but maybe next week, kind of talk through, again, what that process always looks like, how you move it out of a Google Doc, how you get it into GitHub, how you open an issue as related to that PR, you know what I mean? Just kind of all of the GitHub parts that go along with it.
Yeah.
Okay, great. All right, so let's see, I'm trying to see who's on right now. Well, how about, are there updates from evolution risk or risk right now? I don't know if there's anybody on
I know
from
Risk
evolution.
met earlier.
I had my mic off, but I've been on the last few risk meetings except for the one today. But I can provide an update on what we've been doing.
Please.
And from the notes. So we've been working on kind of a crop of 4 metrics: SPDX approved license, pull request description, age of bugs, and forks. That we have the concepts and the ideas kind of laid out, but we have to put them into their own kind of metric format. But we're planning to get this done for all 4 by June 24th, it looks like.
What was it? It was age of bugs, forks, SPDX approved licenses, and what was the 4th one?
And pull request description.
Okay.
And I know SPDX approved license, we have OSI approved license already, but SPDX approved is, by what I understand, it's what shows up in the SPDX license list.
Okay, yeah,
But
I think so
it's
too.
a little more narrow than that.
Okay. I also know that work is being done in risk or discussion about making sure that in the CHAOSS project we connect with the SPDX community, the open chain community, CII, because there appears that there's going to be quite a bit of potential overlap in the discussions that are occurring in, say, open chain and the discussions that are occurring in CHAOSS, and likewise for SPDX and CII. So I know that some of the risk folks are starting to attend the SPDX and open chain. And then the other one is ELISA. Do you know this one? ELISA. It's an acronym.
I don't know much about it, but the link has been posted a couple times, so I'll post it in here.
Okay.
Georg's got it. Yeah, I think our focus right now and our focus for the future is to be kind of a conduit for that information. Okay. If that makes sense. And I think what we're shifting to in the next, while we do this, what our shift is going to be in the next release, at least, is to be working towards more security and vulnerability related risk information, because that's something that's kind of been neglected so far.
Okay, that sounds good. Appreciate that. Thank you, Matt. Evolution. I think they had, it appears they have one metric that has gone new contributors that has gone through the review process and will be ready for the release on August 1st. So that's been commented on. I don't think we reopen that one for public comment, correct, Georg, or do we?
I don't know.
I don't think we would. It's already, it was part of the continuous metric release, you know what I mean? So it already had its 4-week window of public comment.
Yeah, I like the idea of saying, hey, this is already reviewed, it's done. But I also like the idea of saying these are all of the changes in the last release. And maybe the push for the release gets more people to look at these than during the continuous metric contribution period.
Okay.
So I don't know.
Okay. Well, how about this? Think about it. And maybe I hadn't even thought about it until it kind of was, until I was saying it right here at the moment. So maybe think about that. If something's gone through the continuous release process prior to the semi-annual release, does it go back under review? So anyway, and then the other one, inactive contributors. Is this currently? Yep. So inactive contributors is another candidate that's in the, it appears that it's in the continuous metrics release cycle right now. The comment period start date's May 6th, so that ends in 4 days. I believe it's just about ready. Here's the, all right. So I mean, slowly but surely, I guess we have a couple in evolution, looks like 3 in DNI. I think a couple from our risk, looks like maybe 4. It's another, basically it looks like it's starting to build to a fairly decent set of metrics for the next release. All right, so then common, common has, go there. Common has time to close, which the review period has ended for time to close. So that should be ready. And I think there are a couple other metrics that are in process right now, but I don't think anything's under public comment at the moment. You know what I mean? So I think a couple are still kind of in the pending stage. There was one, was it, I don't know. Anyway, there are a couple still moving forward, I guess is what I'll say there. I may actually just recommend at this point that instead of releasing metrics under a continuous metrics release cycle, we just hold them at this point until June 24th. So maybe as you're in working groups and somebody's like, we should try to get this released next week, maybe just say hold off and let's just wait till the June 24th release.
I agree with that.
Okay. And then lastly, value. So value, I think value's undergoing some changes, and we talked about this in the calls, just the weekly calls. But I think the biggest issue in value right now is a restructuring of the focus areas. And there have been some recommendations on what those new focus area names would be. And so my guess is that as part of the release from value, it's going to largely be
updates to the focus areas.
I think so. Yep. That's kind of what I think is going to happen with value. There may not be any new released metrics that come out of value, would be my guess. But I think it's undergone some kind of maintainership changes over the course of the last couple months, and just kind of getting things reoriented there has taken a little bit of effort. But I do think even doing the focus areas is important. I think Common had done this a while ago, and I think it helped quite a bit in Common. So I think that's going to be the release. I guess those don't really go under public review, do they? If we rename the focus areas, or do they? It's not a metrics release, it's a...
We can still put it up for comment, say, hey, here's what we did. And there are some minor updates to the metrics, because the metrics that we had to fit them into the new focus areas, there has been some reframing that we've done.
So, there has, you're right.
Yeah.
I think from a simplicity perspective.
Simplicity and the focus of the metrics and the way that we describe some of the elements in it. So I don't know, maybe we should put it up for comment. Just say, hey, take a pass.
Well, I think we do that. If any metric changes, it's subject to comment. Like even if unless it's like a silly grammar change, like a comma. But I think if the description or the objectives change, or the data collection strategies change, I think that goes under public comment. Do you ever have a concern that as we start kind of growing the number of metrics, the comment period, like the what needs to be commented on, is too much? So I mean, in theory, we could have 60 metrics, right? I mean, with the next release, and then if we're looking at the next release, say in February around FOSDEM, it's quite possible we'll have 50 metrics that have been released, and then there's another 10 that are being released with FOSDEM, right? I mean, in theory, you could have 60 metrics that need comment. I know that not every metric would change like that. That gets to be pretty unwieldy. So I do have a little bit of a concern about how we effectively manage the comment period without just saying, here's 60 metrics. You just filter through what you care about and comment, or maybe we do that. I don't know. So
the way I see it is that we have done a lot of the commenting already in the working groups and talking through it here on the weekly calls. And the 4 weeks is just time to step back and give everyone a chance to take another look, another pass. Sure, it becomes a lot, but I think the bulk of the comments and everything has already been done at that point.
Okay. So is the public comment period kind of like a public service? Like just to make sure that we're doing this in a very transparent way, and because generally speaking, over the course of those 4 weeks, we get very few comments on the metrics. To your point, that it's not that they haven't been thought out, because quite the contrary, they've actually been talked. I mean, like if you look at document accessibility in D&I, I mean, that metric has been talked about for 3 months, right? I mean, it's been a long time, so it's definitely getting good attention. I don't know. A month is fine. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, maybe it's my background in politics when I was on the city council, and we spent months discussing a project and then working with an architect and working with different contractors. And then we finally have a proposal and everything together. And then we put it up for comment. We have one hearing with the public, and then it goes and we
live. Okay.
Yeah. But we're not going back and change the color of the pavement or whatever,
Right.
whatever project we're doing.
Okay. All right. I mean, I'm fine with this. These are the kind of things that are on my mind. This as the process continues to go forward, and it seems to carry a little bit more weight every time. You just might want to think about that. Okay, that's fair. All right, cool. How about other working groups? We have other. So app ecosystem. Georg, do you want to give us an update on what's going on there?
The app ecosystem working group has members from the GNOME and KDE communities. So that's why app ecosystem, because they have a lot of desktop apps. And the focus that this working group takes is that of a foundation with many different projects that they want to keep track of, and to develop a metric suggestion or strategy for this high-level overview of many different projects. And the work we have done so far is to define goals. So I think we have 16 goals, why people want to look at metrics and what they want to do in these communities. Then we have several stakeholders or personas, like someone who does finances for the foundation, someone who is a community manager, someone who is doing mentoring. And we connected these personas with the goals. And that is the work that we've done over the last 2 meetings. And moving forward, our next steps are going to be to dive into one of these personas, have a rationale for why they care about the goals, what they want to measure, or what they need to know about reaching that goal, and then what measurements, what metrics to use, and then complete the GQM cycle, the goal question metric process there. So that's the work that is going on in that working group right now.
So is the app ecosystem looking at using existing CHAOSS metrics, or do you think new metrics will emerge from this? What are your thoughts on that?
I assume we'll first look at existing metrics, but
Okay.
we might as well identify areas where we currently don't have metrics, because I know we're still working with low-hanging fruits. Okay, some working groups are moving beyond low-hanging fruits, but there's a lot more than what we could be looking at metrics-wise, and we might identify this. I don't know yet.
Okay, because listening to you describe the app ecosystem, I actually like how you structured it in the minutes, because to me this ends up, it's similar to those thoughts of how do we take the existing set of metrics, right, and not just necessarily deployed in software, but how do we start thinking about them as having an impact in the world in some way, right? And so it sounds like the app ecosystem working group is kind of taking an existing set of metrics and perhaps new ones and thinking about how they can be deployed, kind of similar to badging, saying, listen, here's an existing set of D&I metrics, and here's how we think they can be deployed in a meaningful way. Sala, you have a question or comment?
Yeah. So that like I came to CHAOSS. I'm kind of like trying to figure out a lot about my life, and I'm working with a core community that basically are trying to improve things for people with invisible disabilities. I think that's the terminology used today. And every time I reflect on what CHAOSS does and what communities like that can benefit from. So the work you guys are doing are definitely past just open source projects, and grows into open collaboration. And I just wanted to point out, like we definitely in the future we're going to see people relying on this formula for a lot more than just software.
I like that comment, so thank you. It's a good comment. So I agree, and I think one of the things that I think about quite a bit is as the work that's done in the CHAOSS project, as it can provide insight into open source communities, or as you point out, Sala, other open communities, how do we kind of effectively contribute to that connection? Right. So if an organization or a group is looking to rely on the CHAOSS metrics as meaningful for them, and they're not a software development community, how do we in the CHAOSS project help build and foster that relationship so that it's meaningful for those that want to make that engagement? Does that make sense?
Yeah. I have one idea, but I think Kevin wanted to say something. Maybe
I did not. Did I?
No, yeah. Sorry, I thought you started to talk because your like avatar came center stage. So, anyways, so yeah, so the one tangent I've been trying to work on in the other side of like the core end, I'm working with someone there who is a designer. He knows how to whip up a site with WordPress, and he's more into design, and I think the CHAOSS metrics can be built with a framework of custom elements that are browser elements. You import the JavaScript module from onpackage.com, onpkg.com, and basically you use a CHAOSS metric element, and you say this metric comes from this source. The idea of it being a custom element is that you could integrate metrics in any platform, any web platform, and you're no longer telling people you need to learn how to use React, you need to learn how to install React, but you're using Angular, so you have to put both. You want to eliminate how metrics can actually be consumed as a component in an application. However you want to display that, I think today components are browser-based, even if they're apps, even if they're mobile. So I would love to see CHAOSS take that distribution in the form of a, first-hand consumable package with good documentation. Yeah.
Cool, thank you. All right. So, Sala or Matt, while we're kind of here, do you have updates from badging? And this can include too, I know Tola's online. At least I think he is. Yep. As to how things are going there?
Yeah, so I'll just work from memory. I don't have anything open to rely on.
No problem.
Yeah, we had I guess an update meeting yesterday. We synced with you, Matt, and Tola, Asta, myself, and Matt Snell. So at this point, we are still looking at comparing internationalization platforms or services, or the question between Crowdin versus WebLate or other options. We are working on trying to use WebLate as a self-hosted, because it offers a self-hosted open source platform. And so we are exploring the, on one front, the internationalization tool set, or, tooling questions. I guess from the other side, and I think Matt might have more concrete words instead of me just using approximate terms. So Matt, do you want to talk about what you and Asta were discussing yesterday?
Yeah, if you want to follow the chain of, if you go to the meeting minutes, and then we have a one-on-one meeting actually when the risk working group is every Tuesday morning, for me at least. But we have a one-on-one meeting minutes also posted here. But we basically go over what we can, there's a series of important links at the beginning, and we go over kind of what we can add to the important links. We're looking to add a document soon where we can just have all the links in one place. But right now, the most important thing we're working on is redefining the questions that we ask people when they apply for a badge, and then the checklist for the reviewers to be able to follow when they review that. And what we should include there, how we can improve it. A big part of a barrier we've run into is that a lot of the project-specific metrics haven't been defined very much. So we're going to also work on improving those metrics themselves. So we've got a lot on our plate for this summer, but I think we can get it done. I don't know if there's
Got
anything
it.
you
No,
want me to add
that's
otherwise.
good. No. I was taking notes and then I was muted.
Oh, okay,
So
got it.
the delay was that. All right. Oh, cool. Thank you. Thanks, Matt, and thanks, Sala, and thanks, Tola, and thanks, Asta. I don't know if you're on right now, but it's great to see that moving forward. If we move to software, I actually don't think Sean is on right now. So why don't we get an update if anybody has an update from Grimoire Lab?
I know there are several Grimoire Lab maintainers on.
Hi, this is Santi.
Yeah.
How are
Hey.
you doing?
Hey, Santi.
So the major update in Grimoire Lab is that we are using now Kibana 6.8 instead of Kibana 6.1. We were talking about that and we were showing the features that Kibana gives us in the previous talk in the Grimoire Lab meeting. So it's been recorded, so you can check the video when it's available. And that's the major feature. On the next Grimoire Lab session, I will showcase the new version of Sorting Hat. It's not ready yet. It's an alpha version, but I can show people what we have been working on. And the next thing, well, and I've been also trying to figure out how much will it cost to move to GitLab. So I was talking about that in the previous talk also, and I was checking how can we move the continuous integration system to the one that GitLab provides. So as you know, we use Travis now in GitHub. But the idea if we move to GitLab, we will need to use their continuous integration system. So I took just one project, Sorting Hat, and I tried to figure out how it works and how to configure it. So it took me just 2 hours to understand how it works and how to do that. So I need to do another test with another component that we have, which is more, it requires more, it's more complex, so it has more requirements like an Elasticsearch database to run the test and other components. So I need to run those tests to figure out how much will it take to migrate that, but because it's the worst case, the worst scenario possible. But I think if it will be really easy because the configuration of GitLab is pretty similar to the one in Travis. There are differences, of course, but it's pretty similar. So I think if we plan to move to GitLab, at least in the case of Grimoire Lab, it will take us 1 day, 2 days, the most. So it's not much. But this is in the case of Grimoire Lab. I don't know the case of Agur, so it can be, if they have a complex pipeline in Travis, it can take longer.
Okay.
But I don't know their details. So.
Okay, I don't know the answer to that either. but okay, thank you. Good. How are for folks at Grimoire Lab, the bonding period with Google Summer of Code students?
So Valerio can talk about that. I think he's here. So
Okay.
On my end, I mean, it seems perfectly fine. Ria
Okay.
has been working with us every Friday and Sunday and Monday/Tuesday. All of her blogs are being published via Socially Constructed. I don't know if those blogs are also going to be published via CHAOSS.Community's blog. But from what I understand, one of Venu's blogs just went live. So I don't know what that is going to look like at all. That having been said, we are just now moving into starting the coding process. We've more or less handed the work that Ria is doing over to development, and we're just giving her basic, here's how to make the system better until that completes. So on my end, I think we're good.
Great. Okay, thank you.
Should I talk about the other World Summer of Code work? That is the work
Yeah,
of Venu about. Yeah,
yeah, just how the bonding is going, because I know that we're kind of in that period right now.
Yeah, I mean, overall, this period went well. So they Ria and Venu started playing with the Grimoire Lab components. In the case of Ria, she was also diving in the social currency metric system. So we set the basis for the next period, that is the coding period, and so they already started working on some tasks we assigned. So, for instance, with respect to the quality models, so the idea is to understand how ProSol works. So ProSol is the component that generates these quality models using the metrics in Grimoire Lab. So we are sketching the UML model and some class diagrams. So in this way, we are able to understand how to drive the refactoring. And then with respect to RIA, so we are evaluating how to bridge what Grimoire Lab produces, so the enriched indexes, to Excel, that is basically what is used by the social currency metric system to assign values. So at the moment, so it's cool, it's going well.
Okay. That is excellent to hear. Thank you. Great. Why don't we move to the podcast?
The podcast is going really well. We released episode 2 on Friday. We will release episode 3 this Friday. And then we'll finally get the podcast submitted to all of our podcasting apps and iTunes and so on.
Okay.
So then Chaos Cast is going to go and grow and be big and amazing. We have 2 episodes published. We have 5 more that are already recorded and at some stage and from not yet edited to already fully edited. And we have 1 more planned. Last week we had a great interview with Ruth Cheesley from Mautic. Next week we have an interview with Chris Anichek from CNCF. And there is also experimentation with a different format that is more like CHAOSS members talking amongst themselves about different issues and really diving deep, like what we did with defining open source community health. Venya and Matt Robert did one on vanity metrics. And so it looks like we may have 2 different styles of episodes. One is the interview style and one is the jam session. That's what I'm calling it right now. Maybe we have a better name for it.
Okay, cool. And sounds great. And Venia just put in the chat that there's going to be a podcast with John O'Bacon recorded sometime in like early to mid-June. That's really exciting too. So pretty
So
amazing group
if
of
I
people.
Yeah, if I could put it out, Jono is working on a somewhat strict schedule. So he kind of had to front load things for between the 8th to the 14th. So if anyone wants to be a part of that podcast, we have a link to a Google Doc. I'll also put it into the agenda for you to set that up. It's kind of a hurry up and wait kind of thing. So try to get the times that you're available in so we can get the panelists and get it going. And then we'll go from there.
Right, that's super cool. Thank you for that. All right. Let's see. Oh, okay. Anything else on the podcasts from anybody?
That's it. Thanks.
Okay. You put the, I see the community handbook link there is actually in relation to the podcast. I thought
Yes.
maybe you were talking, not the other discussion. So there is another discussion going on, if you haven't seen it, about moving the community handbook. So right now it's in GitHub, and moving the community handbook to GitBooks. What's it called? GitBooks.
Github. Yeah.
GitBook. Yeah, go ahead.
The proposal is from Just Kirat, who is interested in working with us through the Google season of Docs.
Okay.
And so as we were discussing his ideas for this project and his proposal, he really is looking at Gitbook because he really likes the platform, has many good reasons for it. And so I said, this is a conversation that I, as a mentor, and not just me, it's also Armstrong, who is very involved here, that we cannot make because it's a community conversation. So we asked him to move it to the mailing list to get everyone's input. So that's the background of how this got started.
Gotcha. Okay. I guess, I mean, taking a look at it, I think personally, I'm not averse to it at all. I think having that kind of documentation in a slightly nicer looking place than GitHub, like a markdown file, is not a terrible thing. I think Daniel had brought up the potential for cost, which I don't want to get involved in. So I think there are a couple, I had emailed earlier today, a couple outstanding questions that I still think need to be, that weren't answered on the thread. Okay, do you know is Google Season of Docs paying this year? Is there a stipend?
I'm not sure.
Okay, I think in the past there hasn't been. I think it's just been like a certificate of participation. Okay, I'm not sure either. Okay, good. I think the last thing on the agenda here is the efforts to explore the move from GitHub to GitLab. We did have obviously an update from Santi on that. Sean's not on the call, so I can't really speak to that at the moment. Alrighty. And then I think my last update is we're starting to have weekly meetings with folks from the Linux Foundation just on the community reports, the one-page community reports. And I think one of the biggest thing that we're looking at is how we can improve the workflow on collecting the required information to build a community report, and then integrating both Augur output and Grimoire Lab output into that community report. How do we have somebody make a request, funnel that request to produce useful data, and then return the report within a reasonable amount of time? So that's moving forward pretty positively from my perspective. I think, Matt, you had one last comment?
Yes.
Is that right?
Speaking of Season of Docs, we have had a lot of interest already, and I think that's a good thing, about the Season of Docs for the badging. And I had just wanted to mention we are trying to expedite the process of getting the microtasks out because we've had a lot of questions about them. So,
Okay.
and I wanted to mention here, if anybody has any comments or reviews to have for the badging microtasks for season of docs, feel free to say whatever you want about it, and we'll take it into account. That's all I have for that.
Okay. It's a little, I will just say this in like the last minute. The way that we did Season of Docs was the Linux Foundation submitted, I mean, you know this, but the Linux Foundation submitted, and we were one of the potentially many projects that are under the Linux Foundation. So I am not entirely sure how, say, 10 mentees are assigned or 10 slots are assigned to the Linux Foundation, how those would end up in the CHAOSS project. You know, see what I'm saying? Like with Summer of Code, it's pretty obvious. Like here's 10 slots, and then we just allocate them to the project internally. So I'm not sure what that's going to look like.
So far, I've been entertaining the idea that we could have a mentee through that process, and under the assumption that it will happen. But if it doesn't, then we just wouldn't be able to fund them for the project. But we can take applications as it is now.
Okay. Okay.
I think Venu is on the call and he's been organizing the Google Season of Docs.
Oh,
Maybe
yeah.
Venu has some thoughts.
Yeah, so can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, the last thing I heard about till and awake is like they're gonna distribute the slots, the total number of slots which are given to the Linux Foundation into or to all the sub organizations. But we don't know the exact number how we might receive, but it could be around 1 or 2. I think so.
Okay.
But it
Okay.
can be greater than that. So we need to wait to listen to that.
Okay. Do you know when that would be, Venu?
I'm not sure, like, but I think he's gonna reply to us as soon as possible.
Okay. If you get the date, maybe you could add it to the minutes. That would be helpful.
Yeah, sure. I'll just
Okay,
check
thank
my
you.
mail again.
Okay. Well, we're at 11:50 in the spirit of ending 10 minutes early. I'd like to thank everybody for showing up and coming. It's good to see people. And we will see you on many of the other working groups, software projects and weekly meetings. So take care, everybody.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Take care, everyone. Bye.